how many people? About 20 people here?
Yeah.
Yeah, take as many as you want, because we have another big box room at the temple. That's the one in the temple room, Mata, you know,
Yes, yes.
for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The short story has different color, right? Right now.
Yeah, they changed the color.
Eyes.
What's her name? She's from Hungary. Kuntita. I think she was painting them, you know. Yeah, some of them got a little water damage on the bottom left, but you can just kind of wipe that up. And some of them are,
Even better,
you know,
Yeah.
it could be a lot worse after 50 years. But anyways, have some of these folks been to the temple in 1716? They haven't been.
No, unfortunately.
Oh, well, maybe are you going to be in town for the weekend or?
For this weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that, you know, it'll be a, of course, you come all the time.
Yeah.
Where's your husband? He's
Oh.
working?
He's working.
And then there's this other devotee here. Uh, his name is Krishna Darshan, and he's written, he does like a breakdown of every verse in the Bhagavad Gita and every chapter and like a purport. And, you know, like something that you missed reading Prabhupada's books, you can pick up here, you know, like, and he's done about 30 books, but I think the Gita was one of his first. But I just thought I'd bring this along in case people would like to take a look at it. You know, I mean, when I first bought the Bhagavad Gita, I bought it at a bookstore. You know, we have Crocs and Brontanos. No, is it Crocs and Brontanos now? What is it? Main bookstore?
Barnes and Noble.
Pardon me?
Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, Barnes and Noble. Yeah, but they used to have a few different ones, but then they kind of, you know, in a matter of time, they just kind of left the business. And but I bought my first Bhagavad Gita at a bookstore, and I had seen the book before. You know, the 1972 version with the very colorful one with Krishna and Arjuna on the chariot. And I saw these devotees down at the Houston Astrodome in 1972, and I guess that book just came out. And so we were at this program, and we thought it was a Hare Krishna program, but it was actually the Divine Light Mission, which was another group, and they were, you know, quarreling amongst themselves. So they had the devotees arrested or kicked off the property. And so I never got my Bhagavad Gita there, although they were selling them. But then I saw the book in the bookstore, and then I bought it, you know, so that was a plus for me. But when I was reading it, I was having a hard time because I was always getting intoxicated. But as soon as I moved in the temple, I haven't done any of that in like over 50 years. So Christian saved me from that because it was, I mean, everybody was, you know, doing that. I don't know about in Russia or, you know, but I know vodka's big there, right? Because Prabhupada was there and he was with Shama Sundar and he was relating. Uh, they were saying that they were hard to get fresh vegetables and but they could get potatoes and vodka. So I remember reading that, and then there was another thing about 1989 we had the back to Godhead magazine, and it had a picture, a red picture, and then it had the Russian symbol with the sickle and the hammer, and that was on the cover. And then we were distributing that downtown Chicago, and then we later read about the devotees who were going through a lot of persecution in prisons. Did you ever hear that book? I think it was called Salted Bread.
Right.
Oh, I never read it. I know we have it at the temple, but boy, we were reading about all the suffering that those devotees went through, and that was far more than what happens here in America. I think. Are you, you know? So I was just what a surrender, what, penances and austerity they went through. But I think they were encouraged by meeting Srila Prabhupada only like once or twice. Was that it? Some of you know the story?
So some of them even have, they have not met them at all.
Yeah, but some of them have passed away, right? They were really but I never been to Russia or anything, but we we had a lot of people coming and going. Is Guru Jana Padma here? She's with you usually with her husband and her son. But anyways, is there any questions? I just kind of it's unfamiliar territory here.
Just wanted to ask how met Srila Prabhupada and how you were able to serve him so many years. How were you able to, relish those relationships with him?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, it was kind of weird. I went to this rock festival on Memorial Day weekend, which was the end of May 1970, and there was another devotee there. His name is Bhima Das, and he's from St. Louis. We didn't know each other at the time, but he's the temple president in Bombay, Juhu. And we reminisced later that we met the devotees there, and the devotees were handing out simply wonderfuls and oranges and things. But this was a big rock festival in between Chicago and St. Louis, Memorial Day weekend, 1970. So that's like 55 years ago. 55 years ago. So everybody was taking a lot of intoxication. That was pretty prevalent, and it still is, I guess, because I talk to devotees that go to these festivals, and this devotee named Parma Karuna, you know him? He's just book distribution all the time. He's got the big white truck. He goes all over. He just was in Wisconsin, and he sold 800 books, and he collected $5,000. And then one fella bought $400 worth of book, this real big guy, and Parham left his van open at night, and the guy came in and started beating him. And then the 7 police officers came, and but he says he goes to these things. I haven't been to any of this stuff in like many years, but everybody's like still intoxicated, and so it's very difficult to deal with that. But he somehow or other he's empowered, and he's able to distribute a lot of books. So he's going all around, and it's amazing. And he just got a new van. But anyways, in relationship to his distribution, I was able to run into this. I saw the book in a bookstore, and that's when I got it, like a couple years later. And then I was watching TV, and there was a picture of Srila Prabhupada on TV. He was in Chicago for the Rath Yatra, and so that was the first time I said, well, this is the same fellow that's on the book, you know. And I said, well, I got to check this out. So I came to the temple. I tried to encourage my friends to come, but nobody wanted to come. It was too foreign. It was too foreign for their, materialistic life. They couldn't relate to it. So I came by myself, and then I was talking to the devotees and explaining them that I was having some difficulty in understanding what I'm reading. And they said, well, he's coming here in a few weeks. Would you like to, meet Srila Prabhupada? I said, well, yeah, sure. I was really surprised, because he's going all around the world. But when he came, there was about 200 devotees or more. I should have brought a picture of the Evanston Temple. We moved in there in 1972. Of course, I didn't come till a few years later, but it was an old YMCA building, if you know what that is. One half was built in 1914, the other half was built in 1929, and devotees moved in. I should have brought the picture, but I was in such a hurry. I'll show it to you. I could send it to you, and you could send it to him. But Srila Prabhupada's in the front. he's on the front sidewalk. And they painted the sidewalk maroon, and then they put lotus flowers all over in the city of Evanston, which is right over here. They got real upset with us because we're, you're not supposed to paint the sidewalk and put flowers on there and stuff, no matter who you think you are. And but yeah, Srila Prabhupada was there for 10 days. He was there the year before for 1 day, but he was giving the classes on the sixth piano, Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it was Ajamil. Was that the Ajamil? Do you know Ajamil, who was, that was his pastime. So Prabhupada went on there for, 10 days. And then the day of the festival was the same day that Srila Prabhupada had promised the Philadelphia temple, which is about 900 miles away, it's near New York, that he would take part in there. So they were, simultaneously, they were going on the same day. So Srila Prabhupada stayed up to the morning of our Rath Yatra, and then he flew to Philadelphia. But anyways, that was a very interesting pastime for me. And there was like hundreds of devotees there, and the painting of the sidewalk. They'd go on morning walks with Srila Prabhupada, and everybody was they were fighting to go on this morning walk with Srila Prabhupada because they're so. I thought it was kind of childish, that they got so, they were actually pushing and shoving each other. And I said, oh, I'll just stay back. But anyway, so that was when I first moved into the temple, and then we were in the Evanston temple, which is, I don't know, it's only a few miles from here. I think about 3 miles from here. And then the Northwestern University, which is right over here, they wanted the property so they could build a dormitory for the students. So they found 200 building code violations on our property, and they said, you want to fix it or you want to move on. So they gave us, I think they gave us $140,000 for the property, and we were able to get our present property because right next door there was a bank where we're at now, and they wanted the property so they could tear it down and put up a parking lot, expand the parking lot. But somehow or other, we were able to get the property, and that's the rest was history. So we've been there for like 45 years. But like most of you haven't been there, right? Oh well, maybe she'll bring you over there or something. So yeah, that was part of that. But so right now we have very few devotees there. We only have about 6 or 7 living in the temple, whereas before we had, like in the Evanston temple, there must have been about 60, and then when we first moved here in the early 80s, we had about 65, and then we had an apartment building with 21 units, and half of it was occupied devotees with, grihastas, and then griyametis, and, and then we had brahmachari ashram and brahmacharini ashram, and then the city of Chicago wanted that so they could build a school, so they tore that down, and then the devotees got dispersed all over the neighborhood there. And but like I say, now we only have about 6 or 7 devotees living in the temple. There's plenty of room for more people. They're always looking for new people. And then right now we have a board that takes care of the decision making. So just 3 weeks ago, they're looking for a temple president. If somebody wants to be the temple president, they can apply. They put out a post all over America. But
How much do they pay?
pardon me?
How much do they pay?
Well, you'd have to talk to the council. All the prasadam you can eat, I guess. I think at some temples presidents they were getting paid, but I think they're whatever your needs are, if they can afford it, but yeah, those are some of the facts that I've picked up. Is there any questions or anything? other questions?
What attracted you to Krishna consciousness?
Oh, well, I just I like reading those kind of books, somehow or other. There was a book called Be Here Now, I don't know, by Ram Dass. And Prabhupada said, ours is get out now. Get out of the material world. Don't hang around. And Bhakti Siddhanta said the material world is like an outhouse. Do your business and get out. Don't loiter, because their people are just, madly engaged in, eating, mating, sleeping, defending, birth, death, disease, and old age. But we had no idea, because Prabhupada said sense gratification, that's all they know. That's all people are trained up to, madly engaged in chewing the chew, doing the same thing over and over again in different bodies, but they don't see the bigger picture. But I was fortunate enough to get the Bhagavad Gita, and one question led to another, and then finally everything just started falling into place. And my brothers and sisters would come to the temple, and friends, but they never really I could see they never really went deep into the subject matter. And it says that the conditioned soul, he never tires of the three modes of material nature. He's always trying to enjoy separately from Krishna, so Krishna's Maya's potency directs him. It's kind of I don't know if you've heard the word smorgasbord or buffet.
Yes.
Well, it has like multiple food samplings, and you can, oh, well, let me try the cabbage or the tomatoes or the fish or the chicken. So that's what the conditioned soul is. He's just going from one form of sense gratification to the other, and he never tires of those, because that's Maya's potency to, throw you in the material world and cover your consciousness until you're sincere. And then Krishna reveals himself as that verse, to those who are constantly devoted to me, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. I seated within their heart with the torchlight of knowledge, destroy the darkness born of ignorance. So those are the four Chatur slokas, and that kind of briefly puts the Gita, and it explains everything very concisely. So that's what I liked about Srila Prabhupada's book. It was very concise, to the point. Perfect questions, perfect answers. And whereas other things are kind of like, it may be like this, it may be like that, but as Prabhupada says, as it is, and there was a joke. They went to this devotee's house, or somebody's house, and they say, "Oh, do you have the Bhagavad Gita?" And he says, "Yes, as it is on the shelf." So, but anyways, yeah, I lived in this commune out in Oregon, and there was these high school teachers there, and they kind of just left the school system, and they just wanted to explore, kind of a back to nature type thing. And they had this huge library, but they didn't have any of Srila Prabhupada's books, but they had all these other books. So we were just, let's check this book out, that book. And then like Satsvarup Maharaj, he wrote the Prabhupada Leela Marita. He had a book called My Search Through Books. So he was always checking out different books, and then he stumbled upon, 26 Second Avenue, and, one thing led to another. He's very prolific. He's written a lot of books, but he's in his 90s now, I think. So a lot of these devotees are, getting up in their age, like I just turned 76, but I came when I was like 24. So, but then a lot of them have went on to the other side of the rainbow. People have. There's one devotee. He just wrote this book called "Oh Hare Krishna Airport." Have you heard of that? Yeah. So they asked, when Prabhupada came to Chicago, he said, "Well, it's called O'Hare International Airport." And Prabhupada says, "Oh, we should call it Oh Hare Krishna Airport." So he asked Tripurari Swami, one of his main book distributors, to go to the city and say, can you change the name? They didn't acknowledge that, but, you know, but this devotee, he just passed away. He died of cancer. I think he was, let's see, he was born in 1955, so that would make him what, 71? About 71. And he used to be his parents, his father and his brothers, they were into the Marines. So he had this Kshatriya nature. So when we'd go out to O'Hare Airport, we'd have 10 or 15 devotees all the time in the 1970s. And I was going out there every other day for about 5 years. And there was people that didn't like us, and so they were trying to break up sales. And so we needed some kind of, you know, where when words fail, there's, you have to take it to the next level, and, because devotees were getting attacked and stuff like that. And, so he would come out there, and there was that one verse in the Bhagavad Gita, it's in chapter 1, where the Kshatriya, who have that Kshatriya spirit, they become enlivened when there's a battle. And he said, Jitendria, this is my favorite verse. So he would, thrive on that. But devotees had a hard time getting along with him sometimes because he'd get real angry and stuff. But then he'd get real calm. And then I remember one time he got real angry with me. He wanted to go into the gift store and I couldn't get in there right away because, there was a lot of things going on. So then he got real angry. So finally I let him in the bookstore and he says, I'm sorry I got so angry with you. Here's $100 or two, he just, he would do that, go those kind of things. But he wrote this book called Oh Hare Krishna Airport. And I have some of those at the temple if you want them, because he left me a box. But, have you heard of that book, Prabhu? You look like you've seen it. No? Okay, it's mostly book distributors would read it, But he kind of fabricated thing and exaggerated things. So I was hoping that he would make a second edition because I wanted to correct him on a few of the things that he said that I did. So which I didn't do. Like I say, I bought my book and he said I stole my book. I didn't steal it. And then he said I was reading the book 12, 14 hours a day. I mean, maybe 2 hours a day, but he would exaggerate things. And then, but, he meant well, but, he got married and had 3 children and they're all devotees, but, was just passed away out in California. But, are most of you devotees are from, Russia?
Originally, Ukraine, Russia, Belarus,
Oh, okay. So you all know each other pretty much.
but we met each other in the United States. Not
Oh, okay. Yeah. And have any of them been to Subbal's kirtan programs?
No.
Oh, yeah, he's pretty I thought they were coming today for sure. Yeah. So yeah, like if you get a chance, Sunday is our main day at the temple and starts at 5 o'clock artik and then prasad. Then they have class and then they have prasadam. Most of the people, I would say maybe about 90% are from India, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
So, some people feel uncomfortable with that, but, we're actually beyond all that. But, and then we have another temple in Naperville. That's about 40 miles from where we're at, and that's kind of eclipsing our temple because they have 100 parking spots and 7% of the population in Naperville is from India. So mostly they're family oriented people with children. And so there's a lot of kids there. You've been there, right? Yeah. So yeah, then they just $10.5 million on this property, and it's pretty much brand new. And then they're building it. The front of the building, it's going to be like a traditional Indian temple. it's gonna be, that's another $1 million or something like that. You know, and I thought, like I say, I think it might eclipse our place because they have more parking and, a bigger, more parking means, you can accommodate more people. Our temple is in Rogers Park. They call it Rogers No Park because the parking is very, the parking is very limited, right? Mata?
Yeah.
It's, yeah, but we have a parking lot with 25 spots. And that gets pretty filled up pretty fast. We used to rent out spots, but we can't do that anymore because we need the parking for the congregation. But so yeah, every Sunday, and then they have the kirtan thing the last Saturday evening of every month. And then what's the next festival is John Masmi's in September, right? Yeah, so but anyways, what other temples? So some of you have have been to the Moscow temple and things like that, or some of you have been there. Yeah, I've never been there, but I heard it's flourishing there, and a lot of see in America, there's so much sense gratification, and they're so enamored by material existence that in their struggle for existence to maintain their households and stuff like that. But it seems like in Russia that there's so much persecution and so much pain and the struggle for existence that people are just they're very open to Krishna consciousness. Would you say that's correct?
In Ukraine, especially.
Oh yeah, yeah. That one Mataji, she's from Ukraine. I haven't seen her lately. She was supposed to paint the fence, and she never came. So I was hoping she'd come so I could give her the paint and stuff. But you know what I'm talking about? Oh, she has that band. It says "Free Ukraine." That was a few months ago. Trying to think of her name, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know, Nadia.
Okay. Yeah, I have. Yeah. So yeah, if you tell her if she still wants to paint the fence, she can paint the
I
fence.
will tell.
Still nothing.
The fence is ready.
Uh,
Could you tell us a little bit about the personality of Srila Prabhupada and your relations?
Pardon me?
Could you tell us a little bit about the personality of Srila Prabhupada?
Oh, well, yeah, I didn't have too much personal association, but because wherever Srila Prabhupada was, everybody was always around him and crowding around him and stuff like that. But when I first came, I just had the Bhagavad Gita, and I didn't know all that much about his personality. But then Sats Rupmars came out with the Prabhupada Lilamrita, and there was like six volumes, and then there was seven. But first of all, I think the first book came out about Srila Prabhupada was volume 2 because they were still preparing a lifetime in preparation, and then the other one was Only He Could Lead Them, I think, or Planting the Seed. That was the first one I read, and so we found out more and more about Srila Prabhupada. And at that time they didn't have the internet, and so the communication was mostly by telephone or by letter and stuff like that. And Prabhupada didn't really like the telephones or that kind of things. He would write a lot of letters, and there's like five volumes of Srila Prabhupada's letters, and how he would interact with so many people. He had like over 5,000 disciples, and so like I say, I didn't have much personal association, but mostly through reading the books and things like that. but now there's so many books. Before there wasn't that many books, you know, I mean, he was always pushing them. I remember when I came, the Chaitanya Charitamrita was pushing the devotees very much to get this finished. And so they had so many devotees working on it. And it was originally a 17-volume set. The Adya Lila was 3 volumes, the Madhya Lila was, I think, 9 volumes, and then Antya Lila was 5 volumes. But now they condensed it down to 9 volumes. But it's all there pretty much. And then I remember when I came, he was working on just finishing the 4th canto and working on the 5th canto, which describes the hellish plants, the 28 hells, for all the various things that we get involved in.
It's the most popular part.
Pardon me?
The most popular part of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, well, it's very scary too. You've seen those pictures? My God, you know, you don't want to, you know, I remember when I was a little kid, my parents brought us to Massachusetts, and there was a place called Cape Cod, and we went there, and this was like 1965, you know, I was like 15 years old, and they brought us to this restaurant to have lobster, you know, you could get a lobster for $2.50, and you could go over to the aquarium, you know, and point the one you wanted, and they would take it, and put it in boiling water. And I saw that, and I go, "Oh my God, that is so horrible!" But that's in the. You seen that picture in the 28 Hells?
No,
It shows about the kid putting the lobster in. You know, you look at that picture. That as soon as I saw that the 28 Hells, I just wow, that brought back immediate memories of that lobster. People don't think anything of it, you know. I mean, you go to a supermarket and there's all this meat there, but they have no idea. They just have no idea of what the suffering that goes on. You know, every living entity is subject to, you know, suffering, but they're blind to that. Oh, and my mother used to say, you know, we were brought up a Catholic, and I was saying, well, you know, in India they have the sacred cow. What does that mean? He says, we're Christians. In the Bible, it says you were given dominion over all creatures. But I was thinking, does that mean we exploit them? And Prabhupada said, this slaughterhouse society is going on due to a brute mentality. And in America, they started there's a place on the south side, huge place where they call the hog butchers of the world. They killed more hogs and cows there than any place else. And this was 1865 to like 1970 when they closed this down. But we'd go do Sankirtan there in this area and try to distribute books, and they had Harinam. But the vibration, you know, you could smell the meat, and you know, everything was just so horrible. And Prabhupada said that it would be very, very difficult to start a temple in Chicago because it's such a sinful place, because they've killed more cows here. Now they kill them in different states like Iowa, Nebraska, and they bring in a lot of people from like Vietnam or, you know, 10th world countries, and they work in these places, but they can't really work in them for too long because it's a very dangerous environment, and people get harmed. And then some people have a sense, they kind of equate, you know, slitting the cow throat with, you know, pain. But he also said that this slaughterhouse society is going on due to a brute mentality. And he said the Sudras have done great, great harm to human civilization because they don't know, you know, they're misled by, you know, misleaders. And you can kind of see the sequence of events where we're at today. People don't really, you know, see the suffering. You know, they're not empathetic. You know, so there's a lack of compassion, and all these things. It says the four things that are diminishing in the age of Kali are memory, bodily strength, duration, and forgiveness. Those are the four things. There's other things too. It's, it says Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, and there's no end to the degradation of Kali Yuga. I think it's the 11th or 12th canto. It describes the symptoms of the age of Kali. There's a whole chapter on that. But yeah, so in America, I think it's like 3 or 5% vegetarians. I don't know what it is in Russia. Pretty. 5% in Russia.
Oh no, you said in America, right?
Yeah, I think about 1 out of 20 people, and then we have these vegans too. Yeah, well, I thought that's a lot of. They're killing so many animals every day. It's,
There's a question from the audience.
yes.
Yeah, so the question is, when Prabhupada's disciples talk about past times with Prabhupada, they usually talk about personal instructions they received from him that they have been carrying throughout their lives. If you have one, would you mind sharing with us?
Oh yeah, I was when I got initiation in Detroit in 1976 at the Fisher Mansion. Srila Prabhupada never gave me any instruction, but I'm left-handed, and I write with my left hand, and I do a lot of things. 5% of us are left-handed. Some people play guitar with their left hand, and Jimi Hendrix played with his left hand. Paul McCartney and the Beatles, and we just do certain things differently, And he offered me my beads, and asked me the principles, and chant 16 rounds. So I went like this, and he looks at me like, and then the devotee hits, and he says, "Use your right hand." So that was the instruction.
Were you able to follow this instruction?
Right.
Were you able to follow the instruction?
Yeah, but sometimes I don't know if you ever notice you're chanting and your hand gets numb, so you have to get the circulation and the blood going. So I know one devotee, he had a stroke, so it paralyzed. So now he's been chanting with his left hand for like over 50 years. It's a devotee in Canada, but that's kind of a rare thing. But he's still chanting, but he had a stroke like over 50 years ago. But yeah, anyways, the other thing is, Prabhupada said, Prabhupada, so many devotees are here. He says, yes, because he says, don't be surprised who stays. Don't be surprised who leaves. Be surprised who stays. But, if you're constantly seeing the miseries of material existence, and you see the alternative, the intelligent alternative, you can gravitate towards that because, Krishna's within, and he helps, the Chaita Guru. So they asked Srila Prabhupada, he says, you're always praying to Krishna. And he says, yes, I have a healthy fear of Maya, and you Westerners don't have a healthy fear of Maya. So that's good sign to have a healthy see Maya for what it is, and it says the two main things are women and money. So, I mean, not to be offensive or anything, but that's what I always remember. If you could keep it simple, fine. Because I know devotees that have been entangled and they kind of regret it. They have such an enormous responsibility to take care of, and it's a financial burden. Because in order, Prabhupada says, without money, nothing can be maintained. But if you can live simply, that's I was fortunate that way.
I checked, it's only 1% in Russia.
Pardon me?
1% in Russia.
A vegetarian, only one out of 100. Wow.
So it's pretty good statistics here.
Jeez. Yeah. Any other
Yeah.
questions? from-
He said about that it should be people who stay, not those who leave, right?
Be surprised who don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays,
Yeah.
you know.
And my question is like, what kept you in Krishna consciousness for so many?
Like I kind of you know, it's a good understanding, you know. I mean, you know, inquisitive mind, you know, just see things as they are, you know, and then it's all there in the, you know, it's all in my books. It's all in my books, you know. We have a huge library, but I just basically, I'm kind of always doing maintenance. You know, you kind of know I'm always doing maintenance, and it's such a big building, and you know, just to maintain it's like it always keeps me busy. So there's always some service to do. You know, I went to India for 35 days. So I went to Cambodia and Thailand and India. I went to Angkor Wat. Have you ever heard of it? I went there, and there's like 600 temples, and it's an amazing place. And so when I came back, you know, I was gone for 35 days. That was like 2012. And we have limited people there. So uh, the things, a lot of things were dirty. So it's just kind of, I'm kind of the pivot person in a sense, not that I'm, you know, the doer in a bigger sense, but there's, I call people life members and dead members. People are there, but they're not there. You know, they're just they're there for eating and sleeping. And Prabhupada discouraged that. In Evanston Temple, you know, it was such a strict discipline that there was no leeway for, you know, everybody because we were young and stuff. And I mean, you were to tolerate, you know, because you were constantly bombarded with the philosophy. You're in Maya Prabhu, you know, you better wake up. You know, Krishna sees everything, you know, all these, you know, things there to kind of keep you in line. So, and the main thing was, you know, book distribution was the main thing, you know, we're pushing that on. So Chicago was the number 5 for book distribution in the world at that time. And we're putting up all kinds of books, you know, like there was many devotees that they were sent here for that reason, you know. So we had like, and then we had all these devotees come from Canada, and they were here for book distribution. And I don't know if you know Vaisheshika. Yeah, he was one of the main devotees, and he was like, I think he'll turn 70 next year, but he was like joined when he was like 16. And I'm looking at all these devotees that joined when they were like 16. I didn't come till I was 24. So Kali Yuga had just by being here in Kali Yuga, the degradation just is so pervasive that you're caught up in it. So, but if you come young, Prabhupada said, you know, they should come when they're just little kids, you know, so before they become contaminated, you know. So, and the kids that are at the temple, though, the young kids that are singing all the time, they have a you know, choir and they're singing, and you know, it's just from birth, and they're just naturally, you know, Prabhupada said Krishna is sending these young kids, you have to take care of them. You know? So better late than never, they say, you know. So I know devotees that have been through Kali Yuga, and they came like when they're 50, or you know, but they have a harder time because you're more conditioned by the modes of material nature, you know. But like when I joined, like there was these devotees. I was born in the 50s, and the devotees were born in the 30s, you know. were, in the 40s, and they were a little older than me, so they would be the first generation, So, but it as far as children, Prabhupada, the children are so innocent. He says, well, they should not remain innocent. They should become intelligent so they can discern between, Maya and, Krishna, So you always, before they get too many negative impressions in their minds, encourage them in the right direction. The blind leading the blind, he would say. Are there many Prabhupada disciples in Russia? Did you know? Yeah, some.
Only one half that.
Oh, what's his name? Because he must be kind of old, huh?
70 plus.
Oh, okay. And there's not too many left, huh?
Not many.
Really? I know Chandramauli Swami goes there. You know Chandramauli Swami? Yeah. He was in Chicago for 17 years. He's originally from New York area. There's a city called Edison City, and that has the largest concentration of Indians in America. That's quite a bit, that's not too far from New York. And Chandramauli Swami he was in Vietnam, and he was this is on a cover of Newsweek magazine. We have Time magazine. We don't have Newsweek anymore. You've heard of Time magazine. Yeah. So, but then we had Newsweek, but it's no longer in existence. But I never saw it, but there's a picture of Chandramauli Swami on the cover, I think, and he was he was on a helicopter, and they were called machine guns, and his helicopter got shot, and he was going down, and he said he was praying to Krishna, Krishna, if you get me out of this, I will give my life to you. So
What
that's
was he-
once.
Was he already into Krishna consciousness?
No, he came after that. He
Oh.
came, like in the early 70s or something.
Oh, I see. So he meant like, God, if you save me, I'll give you my life to you. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because this was back in, he's about 3 years older than me, but he was living at the temple from 1994 for 17 years, and then he's been traveling around more, and he goes all over, I guess. But yeah, Chandramauli Swami, very sincere. You can tell,
Very different.
very well-wounded devotee. He's got some literature out too. Was he? No, I don't know. No, Salted Bread. That's the one you're familiar with, right? Now that talks about the persecution. I think we have that in the library, but I have never read it. But then there were some other books too. Trying to think. And then Ratna Swami's from Chicago area, and he moved to New Vrindavan. But and then there was another devotee named Sura, and he was the temple president in St. Louis, and then but he passed away. A lot of these devotees have passed away in the last few years. But Sura, do you know Sura Das? He was from Los Angeles. He's in charge of, a lot of book and stuff like that. He came to the our temple in Chicago when he was a little kid, and he was sitting on the windowsill. We still have those windowsills about that high. And he says, I was just a little kid and I sat there. This is long before he's in this kind of temple. But he passed away from cancer, I think. Oh no, maybe it was a few people I know, they got the shot, the COVID shot. They're no longer with us. So I know a friend of mine, he was in a nursing home, and it said that the United States government, by getting COVID, took out about 1 million people, and they saved the American economy like $80 billion or something, just so they want to get rid of people on Social Security. So they, it's Kali Yuga, people are being manipulated and they don't even know it. So it's just unfortunate that people are generally innocent, but the leaders are, people are generally innocent, but the leaders are demoniac, talks about that. So, and they're very deceptive and very intelligent, but they're demoniac, chapter 16, describes, lust, anger, and greed, three gates leading to hell. That's one of the main chapters that we focus on. I don't know, but Krishna's telling Arjuna the first few verses, you have all these divine qualities. Now let me explain the demoniac things. So Kali Yuga is so demoniac. Can't even imagine. Another thing is the food. They're saying that a lot of people have memory problems, things like that, because there's so much toxicity going on in the food. I mean, at the temple, we try to, eat as pure as food as possible, hardly any canned goods at all, and then, but the milk and the stuff, they were explaining the Prabhupada, the the milk industry is very seemingly corrupt and stuff like that, because everything is, people are trying to exploit the resources of material nature to their utmost, to what what they can get out. I remember the devotee just saying in ISKCON, he said ISKCON used to be more of a giving movement. Now it seems like it's more of a taking movement. So people seem like they're taking what they can from the movement, but I don't know. These are a few things that just came up, that come across my mind. But it seems like it's a lot different from the more innocent days when I joined. It's a churning process. Life, it's we're always trying to improve, but there's so many setbacks and stuff like that. But
What do you think is the most important to do, to practice
well,
and keep going?
Prabhupada said the big four and the sweet 16. If you in the Bible it says the straight and narrow, and it says to those who are to those who are irresolute in purpose, their intelligence is many branched, but those who are resolute, their aim is one. So they see, they're focused, they see Maya for what it is, but the conditioned soul, they can't discern these things because they have no criteria, no standard. So they're confused. And the more people are confused, the more they can be exploited. But that was always stressed, 16 and before regular principles. I know myself and talked to other devotees that, Prabhupada, I think, was chanting like 7.5 rounds a minute, and then 8. But myself, I was always having at least 10 minutes, and sometimes you get older and it takes longer. I don't know. I just don't have the energy like I used to. That are any of you, any of you feel like that? They have more. It takes more time to chant. Yeah. So that's I don't know, but you don't seem to be that old. Maybe you're more distracted, but yeah. Where what Vaisheshika would say, where attention goes, no, where how does that go?
Where attention goes, energy flows.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. He was always very just so spontaneous. He wrote a book, Our Family Business, and then he had another one, 4 questions. Yeah, we have those books, but haven't had much time to read those. No. Yeah, he was always going out on book distribution like 6, 7 days a week. He was always amazing. They were just so focused. And he came here a few years ago, and he wanted to go into the stores along Clark Street by the temple, and he would just go in and he would just start speaking and then bringing books, and just he was just like so convincing and stuff like that. But he was very, very much empowered. And I had that book, Our Family Business. We have that. Have you seen? Some of you have seen that book? Yeah. So, but I was at the temple out there in Mountain View, and before they had the Berkeley Temple and Vaisheshika's temple, and they're about 40 miles apart or something in the Bay Area. But the Berkeley Temple was Srila Prabhupada opened that temple, and it's right by the university, and there's a lot of homeless people, people that are having all kinds of Kali Yuga things going on in their lives. But his temple is mostly it's in Silicon Valley, and there's people that are the Indian people. If you notice, a lot of them they're not so engrossed in intoxication and gambling and breaking. They're more family oriented. Like I know at the temple, we have some devotees that were kind of like they came when they were like real young, and they're very a lot of them are Radha Swami disciples, and they're very fixed and focused. And so but in the Berkeley temple, they had a lot of fallout with people. There's a lot of sincere devotees in that area, but I think that was the first Rath Yatra was in 1967 in Golden Gate Park. Prabhupada went there. I think Prabhupada went to that one. Yeah. But California is, and then the Los Angeles temple, the devotee is from Chicago. Savas, he's the temple president, and his brother, Naikatma and Vyapi, 3 brothers were from Chicago, and they're all instrumental in the LA temple. And you know what their father did for a living? He was a butcher. But they got a Prabhupada book, and they just transformed. The books are so powerful. If you take it to heart, you can change. I don't, so that was pretty amazing to me that her father was a butcher and all 3 sons became devotees. But so we had 1 cart this year. In New York, I think they have 3 carts every year, and this is the 50th anniversary of their first Rath Yatra in 1976. And in order to get to use Fifth Avenue, which is like the main city in America, that if you heard of Fifth Avenue, and Donald Trump was able to get the pass to get that through. So I think he's done one good thing, and then he was able to get a park where the devotees could set up the Rath Yatras and put the carts together. So to his credit, but we're kind of apolitical. We don't we see things, but they asked Prabhupada because there was a devotee who was running for mayor in Atlanta, and trying to think of his name offhand. But anyways, he didn't win, but he came pretty close. And as far as politics, Prabhupada says, we're meant to give instructions. We don't want to get entangled so much in that, because even for his sannyasis or a lot of devotees, he said they shouldn't do any other service, but to just concentrate on book distribution, because otherwise there's, like too many diversions of the mind. And if you can stay focused, then you can put your energy in that way. And that's Prabhupada always stressed book distribution. I mean, if it wasn't for a book, I would have been, I mean, just being like philosophical nature, inquiring and questions and answers, perfect questions, perfect answers. So everything just was so constantly bringing into the next level and stuff of understanding. But it says a lot of people aren't so philosophically inclined, but somehow or other, and we most of us got books, right? Is that I don't know, Bhagavad Gita as it is. But like, yeah, this one devotee, I have this book, and it, like I say, he's done like about 35 other books, but he's really Brahminical and not puffed up or anything, because sometimes that could be a contamination. But you might want to check this out, because it's very analytical. So, anyways, any more questions or something? I don't know. This isn't usually my everyday thing. I'm usually fixing something or trying to do the needful, as Prabhupada said. Whatever happens, deal with it accordingly. What were you saying?
Oh, I'm curious, can you describe your generation? Because it seems like Prabhupada came right at the exact time in America where, like, it seems like your generation was ready for his message and it was very conducive for his mission. And how would you compare your generation to the current generation?
Well, music was a big thing, and I didn't, never got into the heavy metal or any of that kind of stuff, but I liked things like Bob Dylan and folk music that was kind of in the mode of goodness, and it was very thought provoking. And people in that generation, they were more inquisitive. But as Kali Yuga progressive, it seems there's so many diversions. Maya's potency is everywhere, and the demons know how to exploit that. And but yeah, ours was inquisitive, and the Vietnam War was going on, and my draft, I had to go when you're 18, you have to go to the draft, and that was 1968. And then I remember there's one devotee, he was going to get drafted, and Srila Prabhupada said, "Oh, we're in Lord Chaitanya's army already. We have a more important mission, you know." And somehow or other, you got a religious deferment, But when I went to the draft board, you had 365 days in a year, and your birthday would correspond to your number. So uh, I was, my number came up. I was in college, and I worked at this newspaper in Wichita, Kansas, called the Wichita Eagle and Beacon, and we would work there on the weekend just for one night, and just give you a little extra money. So the draft numbers came down in the newspaper, and my number was number one. So I was going to be drafted, and I thought, well, at least I'm in school. And then they said, "Oh, we made a mistake. Your new number," this the next day, the print, "we made a mistake. Your new number is 357. So that's the other end of the spectrum. So I was able to avoid that. And I knew some devotees that they went to Canada to avoid the draft, and they became devotees in Canada. And but there was a lot of protests. I know my draft board on the south side of Chicago, right next to my high school, Catholic high school. And they didn't have computers back then. And they had, it was on mimeograph typewritten sheets. everything was in filing cabinets and, you know, by hand. So, because there was no computers then. And I remember they went in and burned it down at night. They burned down the draft. So their records weren't there, you know. So that was relieved a lot of people. But that was right next to my high school. It was a Catholic high school, and there was the little draft board, there was a bar, and then there was a high school. And then there was the monastery where the priest lived. And it was an interesting time, you know, because I mean, when you're young, you don't have any direction. You know, in America, it's just like, you know, sense gratification, and that's, you know, you don't know what to think. You know, I mean, Prabhupada education, so-called education, you know, real education is, you know, knowing who you are, what you're doing here, and stuff like that. Those things weren't really existent, but the people were inquisitive, and in New York, that's in that area there. Prabhupada, you know, when he got off the boat, he said, I don't know. In 1965, he wrote that poem. He says, I don't know why you brought me here. These people are, you know, they seem to be happy in material life. And then, you know, I don't know which way to turn, right or left. You remember that? He didn't know what to do, what, you know, where somehow or other Krishna directed him to the Lower East Side. And there's like a university there, you know, it's kind of like an intellectual enclave for New York, because a lot of people would come there and, you know, express different ideas and stuff. So it was kind of I think it was an ideal place in America that probably came to New York City, to Greenwich Village. But I had a friend that was, he's a little older than me. He was a Vietnam vet, and he met the devotees. He would had a very difficult time with heroin, because he was in Vietnam and came back, and he's like about almost 10 years older than me. And he said, I was just, you know, praying to Krishna, and somehow or other I was directed. And then he was working in the World Trade Center, you know, when the towers were attacked. And he was working the building next door. And the first plane hit. And this was a computer sweatshop where they, you know, were all working in that capacity. And they went to their boss and they said, something's terrible happened. He says, oh, it's okay, just go back to work. You know, there was a, you know, this or that, or whatever excuse he gave. And then 20 minutes later, another one came. And all these people from the, you know, their workplace came out, and they got all the fallout, you know, the breathing and stuff. So he was in the hospital for a long time because respiratory diseases, and he also had that problem in Vietnam because he got gassed in Vietnam. But I don't know what he's at now. But he was in New York, and he had an apartment right near 26 Second Avenue, and that was very cheap back then. But now things are so expensive that he can't afford to live there anymore. So you know, the landlord in India, they call them zamindars. They exploit people, and I'm thinking that maybe a lot of these homeless people were wealthy, greedy landlords in their last life. You know, what goes around comes around. You know, but yeah, yeah, it was like a different time, more innocent time. You know, but you know, yeah. But intoxication was so prevalent, you know. I mean, you know, and in America also, I remember when growing up, there was advertisement on TV and everywhere for cigarettes, and 50% of the adult population smokes cigarettes. And now I think it's about 20, because a pack of cigarettes is like so expensive. Oh, who can afford these things? But you know, yeah, as Bob Dylan says, the times they are changing. So we say that, you know, the modes of nature are always, you know, from one mode to the other. You know, they're always it's the material world's a very volatile place. And Krishna says in the 11th chapter, the universal form, time I am, the destroyer of all worlds. So time's a very subtle thing, that we don't see how it's taking place, And I don't know if you ever notice if you're in your car and you're not supposed to, but if you got your phone and you're looking at your phone and then you're trying to do something and then all of a sudden people are honking at you because time is you don't see how it's moving forward. It's a subtle thing. So I noticed that a lot, that before you know it, you're an old, time and tide and wait for no man, But anyways, a lot of you came to America because just to avoid what was going on there, or just you just had to move on, right? It's too ugly, huh?
For various reasons.
Harvey?
For various reasons.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the Indian people, they come to America because they see the dollar, and but then they come to the temple and they say, well, this is what our grandparents were teaching us, but we put it aside and we're going for the American dream. There's a saying, they call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. I don't know if you ever heard that. So people are enamored. So then they come to the temple and then they say, oh, well, yeah, this is making sense. Prabhupada presented perfect questions, perfect answers. So they think, well, this we should move in this direction. And then there's, that Letter Devotee Association. And we say, well, we don't want our kids to turn out like American kids. They're all intoxicated and they're all confused and stuff. So they give them direction, and then so that's why they're very appreciative. I mean, it helped me immensely, because I see my friends, and a lot of them have passed on, and they just became victims of drugs, or they're just miserable lives. Although they financially they were kind of flourishing, but then intoxication has kind of destroyed their momentum and their confusion and stuff like that. But a few of them have come to the temple, and tried to become more involved. But it's difficult. Mm.
And as far as the current generation goes, when you meet and talk to people who joined like 5-10 years ago, like who are they? Like what attracted them to Krishna consciousness?
Well, there's very few. It seems like young white people that are coming. It's mostly Indian people. But if somebody reads the book, I mean, I know it says that they're kind of few and far between. Many people are just too entangled in the complexities of material existence to have a deeper understanding. The mind is always flickering. It's going from one thing to another. So their concentration and their mental stability is, it's always, it says in Kali Yuga that the qualities that people are short-lived, misguided, and most of all disturbed. So you can see that mentally there's a lot of disturbance, and there's a lot more violence. It's just, I mean, but a lot of things are covered up, like in Chicago. I was in jail, Cook County Jail, they call it Crook County Jail. And this was back like over 50 years ago. But I was just some like young white guy, and I was in there for intoxication. And then there was all these black gangs and Spanish gangs. And so they saw me and they put me in with this more benign convict. And because I mean, you read about, the Prabhupada says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adhyalilya Volume 2, there's a whole purport about how the jails are becoming filled with, people because, there's so much crime going on. And, but it's a lot of the white people don't see it, but in the black communities, like in Chicago and stuff, there's so much violence. I don't know if you heard of these. They call them teen takeovers. They go in and they'll take over something. It's big news now, and it's mostly young black people, and they have the family structure in the black community. They don't really have a family structure because if there's no real father, it's just mothers with like a few kids. I remember we had an apartment building and we had half of it was ISKCON devotees, but then the other half was like a lot of mothers with no husbands and young black children. So it's called Varna Sankara. So so there's a lot of instability there, and then it just leads to more degradation. With the family structures, if it's intact and the kids are given a good direction, then they can flourish in the right direction. But an instance of my father, I was so engrossed in reading the Bhagavad Gita, I gave it to him. And then a few years later, I asked him, "How did you like it?" And he goes, "I didn't understand a word of it, neither do you." So that's not too much encouragement on his part. But I always remember that. But he was, he was from a different generation. His parents came from Ireland. There was a lot of people that came from Ireland around the Civil War time, and we have a family farm, which a lot of them they came around this, 150 years ago, and they are family heritage. But some of them, and most of them that I remember, the matriarchs, the older women in the family, went there for a family reunion about 30 years ago. And, I hardly ever see these people but then the next year I went and three of those older ladies died, so the new generation, then I go the next, like 20 years later, it's all these new people that I don't know and stuff. A lot of my ancestors came from Ireland, and they came, and there was a lot of, like the British, Prabhupada, I don't know if you know, he called them the most sophisticated pickpockets on the planet. What they did to India, they just stole trillions of dollars, and there's some devotees have given me books about that. But when Prabhupada said that, the most sophisticated pickpockets on the planet, I was, because they were so smooth, and deceptive. But they were finally out of there. Prabhupada went to Scottish college. He had English teachers and stuff like that. But have any of you devotees been to India? I went to India, and they had in Mayapur, they had a whole area with Russian devotees, and they had many tents. But then there was a big fire. Do you remember that? That was about, I don't know, 35 years ago or something like that. Yeah, but nobody got hurt, but the tents got burned down. But that was kind of an interesting pastime. So this is all being recorded, huh?
Yes.
Just for a small group, for those.
Oh, okay.
Not-
Yeah, I might, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth or something, say something that be incriminating, But I guess you have to be careful what you say.
Do you have a favorite, like, lots of books about Shrila Prabhupada, and they're all great, but do you have your favorite book which you go back.
Well, I mostly, read the, Bhagavad Gita, and then, we have really a nice selection of books at the temple. And then we had a lot of Christian books too, but then they said, so they had me put those in boxes and put them in the garage. Not that they were discouraging so much that kind of thing. But, there was a fellow named Thomas Merton, and he was a Trappist monk, and he died in Bangkok in 1968. I think just after he wrote his appreciation of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, the first one, I don't know, the blue one. Did you ever see that? Came out in 1968, and then the other one came out in 1972, the big one. But he wrote an appreciation for that, and we have that book, but that was the abridged, and then there's the unabridged, So, but yeah, that's anywhere you read, it's always, helps, because I mean the Kali Yuga is so disturbing. You always have to have something that's reassuring. Where is a lot of people out there don't have that. And then there's this one devotee I know out in Naperville, and he's kind of a Christian and trying to be a Hare Krishna at the same time. So 1 week he's sending me all this stuff on Christian literature, and then the other week on Krishna consciousness. So so he's with this church, and they're all Indians, but they're very Christian oriented, and they're very much down on Hinduism, or what we're presenting. And I remember hearing, I think it was Prabhupada, he said, we're actually allies, but due to confusion, we're separated. So
With Christians too?
yeah, well, Christians, and I remember being brought up a Christian, like Jesus is the only way, and but they, that's what. How about before Jesus? Like so. And then the people that would ask these kind of questions, I remember Mother Donna Cayley, her husband. They're down in the New Taliban now, but she was a chemistry student at University of Illinois, and she's really intelligent. And the first book thing she got was Origins, the Origins magazine, and that was brought because it was scientific explanation. And so yeah, I mean everybody has a certain scripture that they like more than other, or maybe I mean they like it all, but there's so much out there, and some of it's so esoteric. But that I think for most of us, if we could just stay with the books that Prabhupada, the first books that he has, we have those mostly unadulterated, because there's a lot of controversy over the changing of the books. But I mean, you can read one beside the other, the 72 one, 1972, or compare notes. But I don't know how many books are translated into Russian language. Is there quite a few now?
Srila Prabhupada? I think it's all.
Everything. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, there's so many different languages now. I know. We put a lot of books on our table in different languages, but Hungarian, Norwegian, Czechoslovakian, but they're not big movers because those kind of people hardly ever come to the temple. It's mostly Indian people and English people. And one thing is, at the Rath Yatra Festival, they didn't sell too many books because a lot of those people, they already have most of the books. Yeah.
I just remembered my question I had before about languages. Do we have any preaching for the sign language, for American sign?
Thailand?
Sign language.
Oh,
for people who are deaf or.
Well, you'd have to ask somebody in the communication department, you know. But they try to reach out to everybody. But, you know, everything is so presented so clearly that, you know, as I remember Srila Prabhupada was giving class and he looked around and he said, any questions? And then he said, of course not. So I thought that was, you know, I mean, it was unique, you know, that the way he said that. Of course not. But then, you know, sometimes I remember Srila Prabhupada was in San Francisco in the early days, and then some lady was, a young lady was in the crowd, and she goes, what are you going to do? Just sit up there and have people worship you? And then Prabhupada said, turned to one of his disciples and said, some people's ignorance is so profound they can't be moved. So they you know, I noticed that some people, you know, they pick up on the subtle things, but then some people you can explain and explain. And if you give a fool good instruction, they become angry. And an example of a good example is an instruction for a disciple, and an instruction is an instruction for, you know, depends on your category of your understanding, you know. But I know people that have been coming to the temple and they've been coming longer than I have, and they're still eating meat. Can you believe it? You know, I mean, I learned that in like the, you know, first week, first day, never went back to it. But you know, and then Jayapataka Swami says they water it down so much, before you know it, they're putting Tulsi on their chicken. Pretty, jeez, you know. So some people have difficulty with certain things, and some people, you know. But for myself, I was able to give up everything in like one day. And so I never had a cigarette or, you know, anything, an intoxication or anything, just because I don't know, I had when you have a higher taste, you can give up the lower taste, you know. And he said, have a healthy fear of Maya, you know. But everybody's situated a little differently, you know. What do they call it? The 4 regular principles of freedom. You know, you know, you have barriers, you have boundaries, so you know, you don't, as people say, I don't go there, I don't go there. So understand Maya and move on, you know. We're in it, but not of it, you know.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's about 1:20. Is there any more questions, or do you know what the next part of the program is? I'm not exhausted, but I'm just kind of, you know, it's not my usual setting.
We are going to have a lunch soon, but it will be in 1 hour.
Oh,
So we have some time, and if we don't have more questions, maybe we can have a kirtan. What do you think?
oh yeah, if you want, whatever you want. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. Yeah, and
Maharaj, there is little gift for you. So you came with this gift for us. It's a book on prayers in Kunti, translation from Russian.
oh,
Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj.
okay. Thank you very much.
Так что, да, киртан, да, попоем? Пока готовим. Ну, что не можно попросить провести, да?
It's similar to the teachings of Queen Kunti.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
reflections on the teachings of Queen
Okay.
Kunti.
Do you know what's Vedanta Swami?
I've heard of him. Yeah. Is he an American guy?
No.
No, it's from Uzbekistan.
Estonia?
Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, there's so many books coming out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Что, тогда переходим, да?
Can I use the washroom?
Yes,